Hey folks, welcome to week 4. So let's pull that up. Go to Canvas homepage. Here we go. Okay, so at the top of week 4, you'll see we have a few due items. You've got your final edited informational request due. So use peer review comments, use my feedback to revise that and get that in. It's 10 points. And you have a discussion, and we're going to peer review CVs and resumes this week. So I'll get to that in a second. We have a short discussion around things like some of our readings on, okay, do you include references in a resume? Do you send those? Right, so take a look at that reading. And, right, the answer is no. You can say, like, references available on request, but you don't just automatically send them with resumes and CVs. You have a link to Handshake, and you're like, well, what's Handshake, right? The discussion just goes over this. Is this like LinkedIn? So Handshake is basically, think of it as a targeted LinkedIn for students. So colleges really use and rely on Handshake as a great way to find internships and jobs that are more targeted for students and young professionals. Okay, so that's Handshake and references, and the discussion will just touch on some of these. So your main task this week is to find a job and target and adapt and mold your resume to match that job, right? Mold your cover letter, your CV, to match that specific job. So we're going to look at how to do that in a second. So you'll see that under peer review of CV and resume. So first thing first, I would go to Handshake, or let's look at these hiring events in the Seattle area. This is through the South Seattle College Career Center. So they're connecting us with all of these, they're announcing all of these hiring events, these job fairs, right? Where jobs will just sort of do like a mass hire, right? So there are these, most of these are in-person events. Some of these are, sorry, my dogs are going nuts in the other room. A lot of them are face-to-face. Some of them are online though. So, right, hiring events is, they just sort of like do group hires. Instead of like, Starbucks having like individual candidates at the store, they'll do a large group hire in a location. Okay. So for this technical challenge, right, I want you to find a real job announcement, right, ad, and adapt your resume and cover letter to specifically match that job, right? So you have to, the hidden step here is you have to research that company, that job, right? You need to look at what their values are, what their mission is, and that language needs to show up in your cover letter. I did this a lot in my cover letters, but like, your mission is this, and through my experience, I have really tried to meet this mission in these ways, right? Like, so you have to quote their mission and their values and what's unique about them, right? In your cover letter, it just has to be there. So go through these job events and see if there's anything that stands out to you, right? We've got construction, right? Trade up to construction, hiring event, AA asphalting, DSHS, TSA, right? So there's just a lot of aerospace assemblers hiring event, right? So find one of these, or go through Handshake, right? Or LinkedIn, and find a job that's, being announced or published, and apply for that job with, sorry, you don't have to apply for the job. I want your cover letter and your resume, right? Adapted, targeting this specific job, right? That's what I want on this end. If you actually want to send these materials out, awesome. If you actually want to go to these hiring events, awesome. But for this class and for this purpose, right, we want the resume and the cover letter targeted to a specific job that you find through Handshake, or maybe one of these hiring events, or on LinkedIn. Or if you have other ways of looking for jobs, that too, right? But I do want you to try to just look through these hiring events, use Handshake if you haven't used it before, right? Try something new. Or LinkedIn if you haven't tried it. Okay, so right, let's say I want to apply for this aerospace right assemblers hiring event, Honeywell. My first, the first thing I'm doing, I'm going to look up Honeywell aerospace assemblers. I'm going to see what their mission, what their values are, past projects, future projects, and you better bet I'm going to put that in my cover letter, right? Um, I'm going to quote the mission, right? I know that your mission is this, and it aligns with my values. So you want to match the mission and the values in your cover letter, right? I like to quote their mission in my cover letter, right? Your mission is this, blah blah blah. And in my work, I've really striven to, you know, uh, pursue a very similar mission or values, right? So basically, you want to say like your values are my values, and you want to reflect their um, their language, right? Their mission back to them. Okay, so right, and there's a lot of there's a lot of hiring events here. I'll just go on February, March, right? Tacoma Public Schools in February, February 1st, right? So if I'm applying to this one, I'm going to adapt my cover letter and my resume. I'm obviously going to research Tacoma Public Schools. What are they sort of? What is the angle that they, what's their sort of like pedagogical approach, right? What's their mission? What's their values? All of this is going to go in my cover letter, right? I noticed that um, your mission, your values are this, right? X, and I do X, Y, and Z, right? So you want to reflect that back. Okay, right? There's just so many great things here. Here's a virtual one, right? And some of these are in person. Okay, so let's get to your materials now. Here we have, this is your technical communications resume reading for this week. What I really like about this is it sort of breaks down a cover letter into topic sentences being, here's my experience, this is why it matters, right? So, here's my experience teaching, and here's why it matters to Tacoma Public Schools, right? You want to answer that question explicitly. And here's some great examples of the original and sort of like revised, an original and a revised, right? During my freshman year, I was part of an alternative energy vehicle project group. And revising that, to what I learned, I gained firsthand experience with collaborative problem solving, problem management, while working on an alternative energy vehicle project during my freshman year. And I would love, right, adapting it to Tacoma Public Schools. And I noticed that you're hiring for, science teachers at Tacoma Public Schools. I would love to bring this energy and skill set to bear at Tacoma Public Schools, right? Where I know that you value collaboration and problem solving, right? So again, you want to do this, state your experience and why it matters to the specific job you're applying to, right? That's the most crucial part of a cover letter, is it has to sound like you're talking directly to them. It cannot be generic, it cannot be general. At the UW Career Center, I went there every week. The year I was graduating, I was terrified of like graduating with an English degree and not having a job. The number one advice they told me is to, instead of sending out 20, 50 resumes, right, just generic resumes, no. Have 5 to 7 or 10 resumes that are in cover letters that are really targeted and shaped and crafted to specifically, right, reflect and model that job, right, their values, their mission. Those are the ones that are going to get you a job. Those are the ones that are going to, get you noticed, not a general or generic resume or cover letter. Okay, so this is a great little read here. Our other great read, we have a reading on, these are templates, right? These are great examples. So take a look at this, resume and cover letters. A lot of good stuff here. If you just need to see examples, right? Make sure you use action verbs on your resume, right? I collaborated with, I helped organize, I, communicated, right? All of these skills are what jobs want. So you need to put these in your bullet points, right? I start my bullet points with one of these verbs, one of these action verbs. Here's great samples. Here's a sample I like. If you don't have a lot of work experience, right? What do you do? Like a job wants you to have experience, but they won't hire you and give you experience because you don't have experience. It's a catch-22. So if you don't have a lot of traditional work experience, look at these categories, right? You can add these categories to your resume. Leadership experience, public service experience, technical skills experience, right? Like, oh, I self-taught myself all of these things. Put it on your resume. Research experience, performing arts activities. I've seen someone, they don't have a lot of formal job experience, but they took care of relatives during COVID. They put that under sort of like informal job skills or informal job activities of, I took care of my parents during the pandemic, right? I did a lot of, they weren't like a nursing assistant, but they did like a lot of sort of home health things, right? And they just listed those. So, right, if you don't have a lot of traditional experience, use these optional category examples. Okay, so that's there. And the last thing I want to show you is, here's an example of a resume. And there's something that can go between your name and the education, right? So between the name and the education, you can put this thing called the summary of qualifications. And a summary of qualifications is, it just immediately on the top of your resume puts like, well, here's the skills the job is asking for. I have this and more. I have this and more, right? So it's called the summary of qualifications. I have this on all my resumes. I think it's a easy way for HR or the job to like look at your resume and be like, yeah, they got everything we ask. We're going to put this in the yes pile, right? It's just sort of makes it really simple for them to put it in the yes pile. So again, this goes right after your name on the resume. And you just list like, oh, you're looking for someone who's bilingual? Great. Well, I'm trilingual, right? So it's like yes and more, yes and more. I've got the skill that you wanted. Great. I've got the 5 biggest skills that you wanted. And you just put those under your summary of qualifications. Okay. And again, that goes right under, right? It goes between the education and the name. So right before education. Okay. So that is essentially it for this week. And again, you'll upload your CV and resume to the draft, the peer review of CV and resume. So that's where you'll stick it. And I have a lot of peer review questions. You don't have to use all of these. Just use some of these, or if you have your own, right, great advice on what makes a good cover letter or resume, use that, right? These are just, think of these as suggestion ideas for how to peer review these. So yeah, I want your targeted, adapted cover letter and resume uploaded, and we'll peer review these by Sunday night. Okay, folks, if you have any questions, email me. I'm always available to Zoom too. So yeah, thank you, folks. Can't wait to see what we do.